One of life's most quietly painful moments happens when someone realizes that years have passed and almost everything has remained the same. The street seems too familiar. The route to work is already known by the feet before any thought even arises. Conversations repeat themselves with slight variations. Worries return in predictable cycles. And when night falls, there's a strange, hollow feeling. The day is over. Nothing has really changed. Without realizing it, days turn into months, months into years, and then that unsettling thought appears, the one most people try to push away immediately because it is too heavy to hold for long. The impression that one's entire life has been composed of slightly different versions of the same routine, that you've been living on a kind of loop, that the version of you that exists today is not meaningfully different from the version that existed 3 years ago, that if someone took a photograph of your inner life now and compared it to one from half a decade ago, the furniture would be rearranged, but the room would be the same. This isn't talked about much, and there's a reason for that. Admitting it out loud feels like a confession of failure, so people keep it private. They smile at dinners. They post photographs that suggest a life in motion. They use phrases like, "I've been busy," as though busyness and aliveness are the same thing. They are not. Over time, a seductive narrative has surrounded us, the idea that each person carries an extraordinary destiny waiting to happen, that life is a growing sequence of achievements, reinventions, and grand moments. But when real experience is examined honestly, not the curated version, the real one, something else emerges entirely. Most of human life does not happen in grand schemes. It happens in repetition, in the silent effort to keep things running, in the work that pays the bills, in the small responsibilities that accumulate invisibly, in ordinary days that pass without applause, without historical milestones, without any sense that something significant just occurred. And perhaps the hardest part is admitting the most uncomfortable possibility of all. Perhaps the problem is not that your life is standing still. Perhaps the problem is that you are promised an extraordinary life for a human condition that has always been built on repetition. Because before any great event, before any memorable moment, there is something that sustains almost all human existence: ordinary life. And understanding this completely changes how we look at ourselves and at the quiet despair so many people carry without ever naming it. Nothing wears a human being down quite like what never ends. It is not the great tragedies that break most people. Strangely, the human mind can survive profound losses, crises, and extreme moments with unexpected strength. What actually corrodes existence tends to be much quieter. It is the continuity. Eating today only to feel hungry again tomorrow. Working this month to pay bills that will return next month. Organizing a home that will inevitably fall into disorder again. Solving problems that don't disappear, they only change shape. Life advances this way in cycles. For centuries, this was simply understood as part of the human condition. Farmers woke before sunrise to tend the same land for decades. Workers crossed the same factory gates every single morning. Entire families structured their lives around tasks that needed to be repeated continuously, without end, without any final completion, without applause. The philosopher Hannah Arendt observed something essential about this. Analyzing labor tied to survival, she wrote that it never completes itself. It always needs to be done again for life to continue. In other words, what sustains human existence does not produce definitive endings. It produces maintenance. And it is in that territory, maintenance, repetition, and continuity, that the majority of life actually happens. Men and women spend decades in professions that sustain their homes but rarely offer profound meaning. Parents repeat gestures of care for years, almost always without proportional recognition. The elderly, looking back, frequently realize that the years were filled with responsibility, effort, and small daily renunciations. None of this is the exception. It is the rule. Repetition is not an accident of modern life. It is not a sign of personal failure. It has always been the basic mechanism of human existence. And yet something inside us resists accepting this completely, because even while living inside these cycles, we were taught to expect something entirely different. Here is the thought that most people have had, but almost nobody says aloud. I am going to spend most of my life doing things I don't particularly want to do for people who will not fully appreciate it in exchange for money that disappears immediately toward a retirement I may not live to enjoy with a body that is quietly breaking down the entire time. This is not pessimism. This is a description of an average human life. And the reason it feels so dangerous to say is not because it is wrong. It is because it is largely right, and we have collectively agreed not to look at it directly. One of the most sophisticated traps the human mind builds is born when expectation and reality drift too far apart. It is not ordinary life that destroys so many people. It is the comparison between the life they are living and the life they were promised. For decades, a seductive narrative was planted in the collective imagination that each individual carries an extraordinary destiny waiting to unfold. Films, motivational speeches, advertising, certain forms of education that repeat the same silent promise: something great is reserved for you. When real life fails to match that promise, a dangerous feeling emerges. Not sadness exactly, something more corrosive. The feeling of being a failed version of who you were supposed to be. And this is the part that is truly dark. That feeling does not come from reality. It comes from a story that was sold to you before you were old enough to question it. The philosopher Alain de Botton observed this with precision, that one of the primary sources of modern unhappiness is the constant comparison between our actual lives and the ideal lives we imagine. The mind begins to measure existence not by what it is, but by the spectacle it was supposed to be. And because the spectacle never arrives, or arrives briefly and then dissolves into ordinary Tuesday mornings, the conclusion the mind draws is, something is wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you. The premise was wrong. But you'll spend years, possibly decades, not knowing that, treating the ordinary texture of your life as evidence of personal deficiency. There is another thought that people carry silently, one even more unsettling than the first. At some point, most people realize that nobody is coming, not in the dramatic sense, not in any sense. The version of life in which someone or something arrives to rescue you from the weight of your own existence, a perfect relationship, a promotion, a sudden clarity, a spiritual awakening, that version is not coming. And the specific cruelty of this realization is that it tends to arrive in your mid-30s or 40s, after you have already organized significant portions of your life around waiting for it. People do not talk about this because it sounds like giving up. It is not giving up. It is more like waking up. But waking up to a room that looks exactly like the room you fell asleep in and understanding that no renovation is scheduled. Psychology describes something called hedonic adaptation. Intense achievements rapidly lose their emotional impact because the brain acclimatizes. Promotions, new cities, new relationships, material achievements, all of these produce momentary enthusiasm and then become normalcy. The problem was never the routine. The problem was believing that life should be permanently extraordinary, that the arrival of something new would finally make the interior feeling change. It almost never does, not for long. And so people begin to accumulate a quiet catalog of things that were supposed to change everything and did not. The relationship that was going to make loneliness stop, the apartment in the new city, the job that finally paid well, the year everything was supposed to come together. Each of these things arrived. The interior feeling, that low, persistent hum of something is missing, remained. This is one of the most honest things that can be said about human experience. A large number of people walking through the world are carrying a private grief about the distance between who they are and who they imagined they would become. Not the extraordinary version, just the adequate version, the version that felt like enough. Nothing reveals the nature of time more brutally than a simple detail. Almost nobody can remember most of their own life. Important dates remain, some intense moments survive in memory, but the rest dissolves. Entire days vanish as though they never existed, not because the mind is weak, but because repetition erases the contours of experience. The human memory functions selectively. The brain records what stands out: novelty, surprise, emotional intensity. When days resemble each other too closely, there are no markers to separate one moment from another. Everything blurs, everything merges. Cognitive psychology describes this with precision. Episodic memory depends on novelty to organize lived time. Without novelty, the brain records fewer details. The result is quietly horrifying. Entire years can feel short when remembered, simply because almost nothing differentiated one day from another. Consider this seriously for a moment. You have lived, let's say, 35 years. How much of that can you actually recall? Not in summary, in actual texture, detail, sensory specificity. Perhaps a few hundred moments, perhaps less. The rest, the majority of your living hours, your actual presence on Earth, is gone. Not archived somewhere inaccessible, gone, dissolved into the indistinguishable mass of days that felt like all the others. The philosopher Henri Bergson reflected on this deeply, arguing that real time is not what clocks measure, but what consciousness can actually inhabit.
When consciousness moves on automatic, when the days are all the same, when attention is absent, when you are performing your life rather than living it, time stops being experienced fully. It simply passes and silently erases. Most people discover this too late. A project postponed for years, always pushed toward a future that seemed distant. Then a decade has disappeared. The body has aged while the idea remained intact, untouched in the mind. Children grew while their parents moved through days too busy to notice. Important conversations were postponed. Forgiveness was suspended. Certain decisions waited for a perfect moment that never arrived. And when perception finally wakes up, the shock is difficult to ignore. Life was not standing still. It was being consumed, quietly, continuously, without asking permission. There is a specific kind of suffering almost nobody discusses because it sounds ungrateful. The suffering of people who have everything they were told to want and still feel empty. The career, the family, the apartment, the routine that looks from the outside like a successful life. And yet, a persistent interior flatness, a sense that something essential never happened. Not sadness exactly, more like a muted version of being alive, going through the motions that are technically correct, performing the role of a person whose life is in order, and feeling, underneath it all, like a very convincing forgery. This is not depression in the clinical sense, though it can become that. It is something quieter and perhaps more widespread. It is the feeling of having arrived at the destination and finding that the destination was a parking lot, that the map was accurate, but the territory was ordinary, that the version of this life you imagined from the outside looked nothing like the version that exists from the inside. And the truly dangerous part is that there is almost nowhere to bring this feeling, because you have what people are supposed to want, because saying it out loud sounds like ingratitude, because the framework most people use to understand suffering, hardship, loss, injustice, does not have a category for, I built the life correctly, and it still feels like not quite enough. Faced with all of this, an almost instinctive impulse emerges, the urge to break repetition through movement. Change cities, change careers, reinvent relationships, start again. The idea seems logical. If time erases what repeats itself, then novelty should reignite experience. For a while, it genuinely does. The brain responds to the new like a burst of light. Attention sharpens, enthusiasm rises, expectation crackles. But the initial excitement rarely lasts, and what the relentless pursuit of novelty actually produces, in the long run, is exhaustion dressed as aliveness. The more aggressively someone tries to escape repetition through rapid change, the more superficial their experience becomes. Nothing stays long enough to develop depth. Nothing matures. Relationships begin intensely and end before they can move through the inevitable difficulties of real coexistence. Professions are abandoned at the first sign of fatigue. New cities receive people who carry the exact same conflicts they were trying to leave behind. Movement does not resolve what is structural. Changing the scenery does not dissolve internal restlessness. The same mind travels along, and so certain biographies appear from the outside to be active and varied, a sequence of new beginnings, projects, displacements. But observed closely, they repeat the same emotional pattern, another cycle, simply in disguise. The question then arrives with more weight. If escape doesn't work, and if the great transforming moment is not coming, and if most of life is genuinely made of repetition, then what? Certain truths only appear when the mind finally exhausts itself fighting against reality, after years of trying to escape repetition, after so many frustrated expectations, after the accumulation of all those ordinary Tuesdays that looked nothing like the life that was promised. Something unexpected can emerge. Not resignation, something more precise, a recognition. Perhaps the problem was never ordinary life. Perhaps the problem was the relentless demand that life be extraordinary. Maturity begins at exactly this point, not as weak resignation, but as clarity, rare, almost uncomfortable clarity that recognizes something simple. The greatest part of human existence has always been made of constancy, not climax. Ordinary days sustain everything. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche formulated this idea radically through a powerful Latin expression, amor fati, love of fate, not merely tolerating life as it is, but accepting it without demanding it be something else. As he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, wanting nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not for all eternity." This is a genuinely unsettling proposal, not comforting, unsettling, because it asks something that feels almost violent in its simplicity. Stop waiting, not for the great moment, not for the transformation, not for the arrival of whatever it is the background of your mind has been quietly waiting for, possibly for years. Stop waiting and look directly at what is actually here. Caring for someone, working without recognition, sustaining fragile relationships through difficulty, continuing despite exhaustion, small gestures that rarely feel grand, but that constitute in their entirety the actual fabric of a life. Paradoxically, when the mind releases its obsession with extraordinary moments, something shifts. Not because life changes, because it is finally seen without the distortion of fantasy. The simple morning, the honest conversation, the repeated effort to build something over years, none of it is spectacular, and yet it is precisely what human life has always been made of. Perhaps real clarity is born in that silent recognition. Life is, for the most part, the same, and the beginning of something like maturity is the moment someone stops fighting that reality and learns to look inside the repetition for what still deserves to be lived, not because it is beautiful, but because it is real, and because it is yours, and because the alternative, spending the one life you have waiting for it to become a different life, is its own quiet tragedy, one that unfolds slowly, one that almost nobody notices until it is already most of the way finished.